Hey people, Shinobi no Kami here. In this fanfic after the Kyuubi attack, Naruto was adopted by Kakashi Hatake, an ex-Anbu captain and a student of Naruto's father Minato. How will this change the little Naruto's life? Will he be spared from the villagers' hatred or will things be the same as in the original timeline? Watch to know. Before we begin, please use the like button and share the video if you enjoyed it. Leave your thoughts in the comments section. Now, let's roll the intro. Chapter 16, A Princess's Pain. Hana Hyuga was sitting in the garden taking a rest. She did that a lot these days it seemed. She had been going in for treatments but she wasn't getting any better, in fact she was just getting weaker, and some days she couldn't even get out of bed because of the pain she was in was too much for her at times. She tried to put on a brave front along with her husband, but she knew that even Hinata knew something was wrong. The doctors had told her that her condition had worsened and that taking her eyes was no longer an option. It had run too far too fast in her and was now attacking her brain. But today was one of her better days. They were looking for a new healer from outside the village who might be able to help her. She didn't want to just give up and die, she wanted to stay with her family. She watched the flowers blowing in the soft wind and she could see how beautiful the day was. It was one of the things she loved about this village, there was just this timeless beauty to it all. Hana-sama. She turned to see one of the branch members bowing slightly to her. It is time for the meeting now. Yes, I'll be right there. She stood up and walked there, making sure that any sign of her weakness wasn't showing. She was a proud Hyuga and wouldn't look weak in front of others, and besides she was the matriarch of the clan and she couldn't be seen as weak. But it wasn't easy, even though her husband had asked her to take a few days rest now and then, but she didn't like being in a bed all day, she couldn't stand that. She was just walking when she felt another stab of pain in her head, but this time it was much worse. She felt sick to her stomach and her nerves were on fire. She only made a choking sound before she fell to the ground. The Hyuga member was scared to death at this and ran to her, calling her name. When he put her onto her back, he noticed a trail of blood coming out of her nose and ears. She wasn't waking up and he yelled out for help. Across the village in the ninja academy, Hinata was spacing off as Iruka was going through a lecture on concealment. She had been having trouble focusing lately and she didn't know what to do. This thing with her mother was scaring her. Her mother kept saying that she would get better, but she didn't seem to be. In fact, she only seemed to be getting worse. She was scared and didn't know what to do. It didn't go unnoticed as well among her friends, as they saw the change in her as well. Normally she was just the shy girl, but now she was practically withdrawn most of the time. It was really worrying for them to see her like this. Naruto had even tried to cheer her up with his usual attitude and threw in a few pranks, but she never once reacted. Of course everyone else did and he got his usual detention after school, but he was still worried about her. He had talked to his dad and he didn't know much about what was going on either. Naruto had talked with his close circle of friends and no one seemed to know other than she was worried about her mother. Ino's mother heard that Hinata's mother wasn't feeling well lately and no one could remember the last time she had came to the school to pick her up. Usually it was her father or her uncle. So they would watch and see if they could try and be helpful for her. Naruto, however, wanted to know firsthand what the problem was. After all, Hana Hyuga was one of the first adults that he had made friends with and he was worried too if she was sick. He waited for the last bell to ring as he packed away his school stuff and saw her slowly walking to the door. Naruto, you think that Hinata will be okay? He turned to see Ino there with Sakura looking just as worried. I don't know, but I intend to find out for sure what's going on, Ino. He told them and both girls nodded, wishing him luck. They knew how close the two were. Naruto managed to catch up with Hinata as she was waiting for someone from her family and he walked up next to her. Hinata-chan, what's wrong? You've not been yourself for a while and it's starting to worry everyone. She blushed a bit and she looked at the ground. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to worry everyone. I'm just worried for my mother. She then felt a warm hand grab hers and she gasped, looking at him in surprise as she stared into his blue emotional eyes, and she felt the warmth and comfort coming from them. She gave a small smile as she felt his strength reaching out to her. "Hinata-sama," a familiar voice said to her. They looked to see Neji there, but there was something wrong. His face was grace and there was just something about him that said there was something really wrong going on. Neji Nichin. Neji looked crestfallen as he spoke the words to her, "Hinata, there's something happened to Hana-sama." It was then that Naruto felt Hinata grip his hand tightly and he squeezed it back, letting her know that she wasn't alone. Hyuga compound. Hinata ran into the compound hearing about her mother. Thankfully Naruto was there with her as she wasn't sure if she could have made it back on her own. The sky was getting dark and she wanted to know where her mother was. Finally she saw her uncle there and ran over to him. Uncle Hizashi. He knelt down to the young girl as she came running up with tears in her eyes. He noticed his son and Naruto with her both had on looks that wanted to know what was going on. He sighed as he placed a hand on her shoulder, seeing her nearly break out into sobs. "What's wrong with mother?" she asked him. "Hinata. As you know, she's been very sick lately and it looks like it's been getting worse. Your mother didn't want you to worry and she put on a brave face. She wanted to fight this and hope that she could beat it, but she's going to be okay though, right? She'll get better." Naruto asked him and Hizashi couldn't lie to them. They were all going to be ninja one day and they needed to face the reality that people died. He just wished it wasn't such a harsh lesson on them, especially his niece who was the kindest person he had known in his life. Looking at her face broke his heart inside and he sadly shook his head. Hinata broke down into sobs as her uncle cradled her against him. Inside one of the rooms of the mansion, Hiyashi was with his wife who was sleeping now as the healer had given her something to take away the pain she had been feeling. He looked down at his wife. She was so very pale and so very weak. They had both been hoping that they could have beaten this, but the healer didn't look like he could do anything. "I'm sorry Hiyashi-sama, but it's gone too far. I'm afraid that the disease has just spread too far, too fast. There is nothing more we can do other than make her comfortable." Hiyashi didn't want to admit that his wife was dying. There had to be something that could be done, something that could save his wife. But he knew they had tried everything they could think of. They tried looking for specialists in this, but the few they were able to find hadn't been able to do anything. Bloodline poisoning was a rare disease and so little research had been done into it. Plus it was devastation. Sometimes it wasn't caught in time, so there had been deaths that until after an autopsy revealed what had caused the death. He walked over to her and stroked her long hair lovingly. "How much longer?" "I'm sorry, but it's in the final stages. She may or may not last the night." Hiyashi nodded his head, closing his eyes, and told him to leave. When the man was gone, that's when he lost all the strength in his legs and he fell down next to her. He never cried in public, but for the first time in years he felt the sting of tears on his face. He held her hand and kissed it, knowing that this was the last night he would have with the woman that was the love of his life. The bright spot of his soul, the only woman he had and would ever love. She was everything to him, and the mother of his precious daughters, and he couldn't bear to lose her. It felt like someone was ripping his insides out, like he was falling and the end was not in sight. He didn't know how long he knelt there until he felt a hand gripping his own and he looked up into his wife's face. "Please my love, I don't want to see you like this," she told him. "I can't help it, the healers," he couldn't even finish the sentence. "How long?" she asked him, knowing full well what was happening to her. It was strange. She had known she had been dying for months and yet here she was on death's door and she was strangely calm about it all. Maybe it was because she could finally stop fighting. She could finally just stop and rest. She was so very tired of fighting this. She was tired of the near constant pain, the tiredness, and the worry of what would happen to her and her family. Now she didn't have to fight anymore and she knew her family would be in pain, but it would endure. They were strong and she knew that they would live on, and it wasn't like she had a bad life. She found love and had 2 beautiful daughters. She just wished she just had a little more time. She wanted to see Hanabi take her first steps, to see her girls' first crush, first date, first heartbreak, first time she caught them doing something inappropriate with a boy like her own mother had with her. She wanted to see them fall in love. She wanted to see them get married and to see grandchildren that she could spoil rotten. She wanted to be with her husband through all of this, to calm him down the first time the girls would bring a boy home. There was just so much, but now there was just no more time for it. "Please Hiyashi-kun, I want to see my family. I want to see them one last time before the end. He nodded his head and kissed her lips and she kissed them back. It would be their last kiss and she felt so sad at that. She wanted to say so much to him and yet there were only a few words that could say what she felt for him. I love you so much, you made me happy and I'm glad that I had you in my life. I love you just as much Hana-chan, and I'll love you forever, he told her as he caressed her flawless face, burning the feeling of it into his mind. He went to get the others and gather them. He found that Naruto was with his daughter and had thought of telling the boy to go back home, but seeing how he was comforting his daughter, maybe it was alright to let him stay. After all, in a way he had become family to the Hyugas. He had befriended both Hinata and Neji and he knew that despite his attitude and those pranks of his, he had a good heart. He turned to see his brother there and he asked him to get Hanabi from the nanny that was looking after his youngest daughter. It was time to gather up the family for a final farewell. Hinata came in seeing her mother propped up on her bed holding her baby sister. She looked so pale and weak and she was glad that she was holding Naruto's hand. She needed him here for this as she walked over to her bedside seeing her entire family in the room. Hana looked over at her oldest daughter and smiled at the sight of her holding the boy's hand. It was so cute and she was happy to see it, for one of the last things she wanted to see was that her daughter would be cared for. Hinata, come closer. Why yes mother, Hinata said, trying not to break down again. Hana reached out and caressed her daughter's face and smiled at her. I'm so sorry that I won't see the beautiful woman that you'll grow into, Hinata my dear. I'm sorry that I won't see Hanabi either, and I'm so sorry that I have to leave you all. No, I don't want you to go mother. Hinata cried out, clutching her mother's arm. I don't want to either dear, but my time is nearly up and I wanted to spend my last moments with the people I love the most. I tried to stay strong and to keep myself alive. I never gave up, but I guess I wasn't strong enough. Hinata, just know that I'll always love you and your sister and that I'll always be watching. Hinata just nodded her head, crying her heart out, and Hana looked over to Naruto seeing the red eyes the boy had from his own tears. She smiled at the boy with the mask on and she remembered that first day when a curious child with whisker marks on his face came up and asked who her daughter was, who had been hiding behind her legs. They had been good friends for one another and Naruto had always been there for her daughter. Naruto-kun, Hana said to him. Why yes Hana-san. Naruto said to her it was the few times he ever used the term san with someone and meant it. Please look after Hinata for me, watch over her while I can't be here physically. Be there for her and always be someone she can depend on. She asked this child. Naruto nodded. I promise and I never break my promises. I know, that's why I asked, Hana said with a small smile. The night was a cold one. There was no moon in the sky as it was blocked by clouds and they were there to help make Hana more comfortable. Hana talked to her family and she didn't look sad, she didn't want their last memory of her being sad. But then she was feeling so tired, she wanted to rest, she just wanted to rest a bit before the end. I'm so tired, she said weakly. I know you are, Hiyashi said, trying to not choke on a sob that he was holding back, and held her hand. Rest now my love. I always loved you my husband, look after our family. I'm happy to have had a family like this. I love you all so, very. She closed her eyes and she looked like she was falling asleep. Hiyashi with a shaking hand felt for his wife's pulse, there it was, but it was weakening. It was slowing down more and more and then finally it stopped. He waited for a minute but the life was gone. He used his Byakugan and he saw the fading light of her chakra. He watched as it slowly dimmed to nothing. Then he deactivated his eyes and hung his head as his wife was dead. Hanabi suddenly broke out crying in her uncle's arms, almost as if she could sense that her mother was dead. Hinata felt her eyes water up and when Neji tried to put a hand on her shoulder she turned and ran. Hinata. Naruto called after her, watching her go. He turned to see Hinata's father fall gently to his knees holding his dead wife's hand. Hizashi looked at the two boys. Go and find her, he said to them gently, and they nodded and ran off. He walked over to his brother and knew the pain he was going through. When he lost his wife it had nearly devastated him as well. He would let his brother grieve for his wife and then he would help him deal with her loss. He had helped him when his own wife had died and now it seemed fate was switching the positions. He walked out of the room to help and put Hanabi down for bed and maybe see if he could make the child less upset. Naruto ran through the night looking for Hinata. He tried the playground first but she wasn't there, and then he tried the ramen stand, the school, and anywhere else he could think of. He wanted to find her and he wanted to make sure she was safe. He was still trying to process that Hinata's mother was dead, it just didn't seem real to him. She had been one of the adults that always had been nice to him and she was everything that he figured a mother should be. Sometimes he was envious that Hinata had a mom like that, but now she was gone. He felt his tears sting his eyes, feeling like someone had ripped something out of him. He hated this feeling, but he had to search for Hinata. Then he remembered one of the areas they played together since they were younger. It was an open area in a forested part of the village. His dad took him there to train, sometimes for teaching him wilderness stuff, although to Naruto it had been more like camping with his dad. He had showed Hinata that once and he made a promise to her that they would camp out there one day. He ran to that place and his lungs were burning and he stopped scanning the darkness. He thought that he had guessed wrong and was about to move on when sobbing noises got his attention. He followed them around a tree and there huddled there was Hinata crying. He hated seeing Hinata cry. He felt like crying himself and he did something he hadn't done in a long time. He pulled down his mask for her to see his face. He bent down next to her and gently touched her shoulder. "Hinata-chan." Hinata jumped at the touch and turned to see who it was. She slowly saw in the moonlight that it was a boy, but then it took her a moment to know who it was. It was Naruto, but without his mask. She hadn't seen his face in over a year and she had missed it. She missed seeing his smiles and those whisker marks on his face. His blue eyes, which usually were full of energy and happiness, were filled with sadness. She tried to speak but her throat had a huge lump in it, and she just lunged herself into Naruto, burying her face into his chest. Naruto was shocked by her sudden movement, but hearing her cry like this was tearing him up inside. He just held her close, trying to comfort her, but he felt his own tears falling as well. He cried for her pain, the pain of her family, and for his own pain at having one of the precious people in his life taken away. They just held each other as they cried on each other, trying to find comfort with each other. "Why?" She sobbed into his chest, clutching at his clothing with her fist. "I don't know," he said softly, choking back his tears, holding her tightly to him. "Why my mother?" she asked again. "I wish I knew Hinata-chan, she was the best mother I knew." He told her as she was shaking a lot from her crying. "I know this, I wish I had a mother like that. I never knew my mother, but there were times that I wished I had Hana-san as a mother. You were so lucky to have a mother like her." Hinata buried herself even more into Naruto. His warm body helped to keep the cold she was feeling away, and it wasn't just the cold of the night but from the death of her own mother that was affecting her. She didn't want to let go of Naruto. She felt safe in his arms. She felt like he could help keep the pain from swallowing her whole. She felt his hand stroking her hair and her back and she cried herself into exhaustion. Naruto heard that she had stopped and looked down to see that she wasn't awake anymore. He pulled on his mask and hoisted her onto his back as he started to carry her all the way back to her home. It was long and hard since he wasn't used to having all that weight on his back, but he endured. He wanted to see her home, and when he got to the gates the guards let him in immediately as they went to send word to stop looking for her. Naruto found Neji, who had on a sad look in his eyes. They looked at one another, not sure what they could say in a moment like this. "Can you help me put her to bed?" Naruto asked him. He nodded his head as he led the way without a word. They got to her room and Neji pulled back the covers as Naruto placed her in there. They took off her shoes and covered her up. Either one knew what they could do for her. Although Naruto didn't want to go home, he didn't want to leave her alone. Thankfully his father came to find him, and when he learned of everything they both stayed to look after her for the night. Hinata's father had not been seen. He had been too wrapped up in his own pain to function in public for the moment. His brother was standing guard over his room with a grim look on his face. The loss of Hana would hit the clan hard, but it hit family the hardest. She had always treated him and Neji well and he respected her. To lose your wife was the greatest pain a husband could endure, just as he knew his twin was enduring this dark night. The next day and for the rest of the week Hinata and Naruto didn't come to school. Their friends found out by the end of the day why when Iruka told the class about Hinata's mother. Those that knew Hinata felt horrible for the girl. Someone was asked to bring the schoolwork to Naruto and Hinata so they didn't fall behind, and Ino and Sakura were the first to do it. Everyone went to visit Hinata the next day and they found her with Naruto as he was helping her through it all. They had never seen Hinata look like that in their lives, and the image would be burned into their memories. They were there for her, and even though she didn't show it, she was thankful for the support of her friends. Naruto refused to leave her side for long periods of time. For the first few days he actually stayed with the Hyugas in a spare room as Hinata had trouble sleeping. He would always be there for her and she would use him to cry on. After the funeral, Hinata was in a deep depression. Neji knew what it was like to lose a mother at a young age. Himself was a very strong comfort for his cousin, as he knew his father was helping Hinata's father as well. That whole year was tough all around on Hinata, and her friends kept by her side, and Naruto most of all was always there for her. It took time, but Hinata finally did smile again and laughed again, but the pain would always be there for her. Naruto could see when she was starting to feel that pain and would do everything to cheer her up. But by the end of the first year in school, Hinata had managed to cope with her mother's death and was thankful for having so many people there for her. Chapter 17. As the years go by. The last few years had its ups and downs. Naruto of course was doing well in school, and although he was doing great at the physical skills of a ninja, Sasuke beat him out of the scholastic scores. Over the years they had formed a strong rivalry, always trying to outdo the other in everything. He had to admit though one of his favorite moments had been when Sasuke had been a bit too annoying. Naruto tried out a technique his father taught him. Mainly you pulled someone under the ground so just their head was left. Naruto knew this one well since his own father pulled it on him during sparring matches from time to time, and he hated that move. But he had to admit pulling it on someone else was sure worth it. Sasuke had been livid as he tried to get out of the ground, and just to add insult to injury he had also taken one of his father's books. He still remembered that day with Sasuke glaring at him and Kiba on the ground holding his sides. "Oh man, this is great!" Kiba roared as his very own dog Akamaru that he had gained last year. His family had finally thought it was time for him to get his own dog, and he loved that day when on his birthday no less he had been given his own puppy. The two were inseparable and the small white dog was barking as well. Shikamaru had to admit it was pretty funny, and so did Choji. Thankfully it was just the guys at the moment as well. "Hitaki, you better get me out of this, or so help me I'll kick your masked ass," Sasuke said at him. "Ah, and here I was going to read you a story," Naruto said, sitting down and pulled out one of his father's books. "Hey, what's that?" Kiba asked. Naruto grinned under his mask. "Just something of my dad's, now let's see. Oh, here's a good part." Naruto read on, and he had to admit seeing Sasuke turn bright red from embarrassment was hilarious. Choji had actually stopped eating and looked frozen. Shikamaru was trying to stare up at the clouds with a blush on his face. Kiba however was on the verge of a nosebleed but wanted to hear more. Naruto was thankful for the mask as well. "Naruto, what are you doing?" They turned to see Ino and a few of the other girls walking towards him looking a bit pissed. "Just reading a story to Sasuke and I think he likes it." Naruto grinned. "No I don't, you idiot, and get me out of here already," Sasuke said, still all red from what Naruto had read to him. He had never thought those kinds of things before, and he was seriously getting pissed off at still being stuck in the ground. "Naruto, get Sasuke-kun out of there right this minute," Ino demanded at him. "Fine, but finish the story will for the guys, will you?" Naruto handed her the book and she looked at it, curious as to what it was. Sakura and Hinata were also there and looked over the blood's shoulder and started to read over her shoulder. All three girls had to admit it looked like some kind of love story, something to do with some type of forbidden love of two members of opposing clans. It was very romantic how the two characters were admitting their love for the other, then they kissed, then kissed some more. And didn't stop. The girls got very red in the face and Hinata actually fainted at that point. Thankfully Sakura caught the girl as she was as red as her dress. Ino suddenly dropped the book like it was poison. "Hey, careful, that's one of my dad's books," Naruto said, hauling Sasuke free. Ino marched right over to him and looked at him. Naruto saw the fury in her eyes and tried to say something in his defense but never got the chance to open his mouth as Ino slammed her fist into his face. "You perverted hentai." The girls didn't talk to him for a week after that, although Hinata tried to talk, but the images in her young mind kept making her faint when the subject came up, plus she couldn't look Naruto in the eyes after that. Although even she had to admit Naruto had the beating from Ino coming to him for that, although she did forgive him first out of the girls. Sakura lasted another week giving him the silent treatment until he apologized for the 100th time. As for Ino, well, he had to promise to help out with her chores at the flower shop for a week straight. That wasn't the last thing either. Naruto had discovered by his 12th year in life girls, women, and just how good they looked. It didn't help that when Kakashi tried to teach Naruto about the birds and the bees, he read his Ika Ika book to him. Although Naruto now knew more about sex than he ever wanted to know, although he personally didn't understand a few things like if it was really possible for a threesome to work in real life. When he was learning the hedge technique, he had been trying to find a way to beat his father in their sparring, and an idea formed. It took weeks of practice, but he finally got it down. The next time they sparred, he unleashed one of his ultimate secret justice, the sexy jutsu. Kakashi had been so shocked to see a young teen and very cute and beautiful naked girl with such an irresistible pout on her face, he didn't have time to recover when the hedge dropped and Naruto scored his first solid hit on his father. Kakashi looked up from his spot, not sure to be proud of his son's inventive nature, or he should wonder where he came up with that idea. He got up and dusted himself off and looked at his son, who he knew was grinning under that mask of his. He looked at him for a moment before speaking. "I'm not even going to ask Naruto, but I'd be careful about that around certain people. It's my anti-pervert move, Dad, it works great on them." His son laughed. "How do you know it works so well?" "Easy, I used it on the old man and several others and they were laid out with huge nosebleeds. It was great. Just don't use that in class. One don't need to come after school again this week," Kakashi said as he got himself ready. "Okay, so now you got two choices, son. You either can do the 3 climbing exercise to improve your chakra control or sword fighting training." Naruto wasn't sure what was worse, the tree climbing he learned 6 months ago and it took him forever to get that down and it was boring. Although he did admit it did work really well, but although the sword training was a lot more fun, he usually ended up with lots of bumps and bruises. He ended up with the sword training, he could heal quickly after all, so he didn't mind. Kakashi grinned under his mask as he was hoping for that. Now he could get him back for using that new technique on him. After a few hours, Naruto managed to end his training for the day and ended up walking around the village. He was still feeling some of the blows his dad had given him and was wondering if that was bordering on child abuse with the training at times. He was grumbling about his father not being able to take a joke and was wondering what he could do today. He knew that Kiba and Shino would be busy working with their families today. Ino and Sakura were most likely training today as well, and those two could be scary when they got into competitions. Hinata was getting some training with her father and little sister as well. Naruto thought about his best friend and was glad that she was back to her old self, although he missed Hana Hyuga when he visited the Hyuga home. Hinata's father was a bit more stern after that, but thankfully it seemed his brother was able to help curb that a little. Then he thought of Neji and a smile broke out under his mask. He had graduated last year and was put on a team of all people, his uncle Guy. He laughed his ass off when Neji told him that. He actually felt a bit sorry for Neji. He knew that Guy could get a little overboard with training, but he was interested in meeting the team. There was this kid Lee that sounded nice and a girl Tenten as well. He hadn't seen his uncle Guy and Neji in a long time too with the missions they went on. He knew where they trained and he decided to take a little look to see what this team was like. Team Guy training grounds. In the field that Team Guy used, their sensei was currently teaching Lee some more taijutsu moves while Tenten was sparring with Neji. And he had to admit he liked this team. Sure, they were a bit unorthodox, but then again, knowing Guy beforehand helped to adjust faster. That is, he thought it would before him and Lee got this very close bond that led to some disturbing scenes. Although at the moment he had to concentrate, since if he wasn't, Tenten would cut him up to pieces. With his bloodline activated, he saw the incoming weapons and would step out of the way, or deflect them. She was very good. She moved with speed and agility and with such deadly accuracy that he actually wondered if she had any Hyuga blood in her family. She always would smile and laugh as they sparred, even when he tried to remain focused and passive. In a way, she reminded him of Naruto, only less hyper and not as loud. She was easy to get to know, and even though he never told anyone, he actually found her attractive but never hinted at it. He knew the risks of getting involved with a teammate and also what it would mean down the line. The seal on his forehead was an ever-constant reminder of what awaited for his own children, and he didn't think a non-Hyuga would cope with that being done to their children. He was pulled out of his thoughts as he caught someone watching from a branch. He smirked to himself a little as he reached a pause in the sparring. "Tenten, can you send a kunai 75 degrees high, and 15 to your right into that tree over there?" He asked her and he saw her confusion. "We have an uninvited guest." Now she understood and quickly threw her kunai into the leaves. A scream was heard as someone fell out of the tree and landed heavily onto the ground. The training stopped for the entire team as Tenten got a good look at the boy. He looked to be about a year or so younger than her, with blonde spiky hair and wore black pants with an orange stripe on the side, an orange t-shirt over a black vest with pockets and a black mask with 6 orange slash marks that looked like whiskers. Damn it Neji, you told her to do that, didn't you? Naruto accused the older boy, pointing a finger at him. Oh, I didn't know you were there, Naruto. Neji said, faking innocent. Bullshit. She could have killed me. Hardly. Tenten can hit a target 100 times out of 100, give her a target and she'll never miss. Neji said to Naruto, who paused for a moment to take that in as he was impressed with it but then went into yelling at the boy a bit more. Tenten felt her cheeks slightly heat up at Neji's compliment of her abilities. It was nice to know he thought of her skills so highly. It was then that he took a good look at the girl with Chinese puns and a pink-styled shirt. You know Neji, you never said you had such a pretty girl on your team. Tenten actually felt a slight blush on her cheeks from the compliment. She never focused on her looks, but it was still nice for a girl to hear that from a boy now and then. Neji however had a slight flash of emotion on his face that Naruto caught when Neji saw the girl blush from the compliment. Oh, so Neji may finally like a girl, huh? Oh, I have to tell Hinata this, maybe we can have some fun and break him out of that Hyuga shell of his. Naruto grinned under his mask, seeing Neji give him a slight glare. Ah, Naruto-kun, one of my most youthful friends. Guy jumped into the scene and took one of his poses. Hey Uncle Guy, how's the training going? Naruto asked. Wait, Uncle Guy? Tenten asked. She had no idea that Guy had any other family other than his parents. Actually, Naruto is the son of my friend and rival Kakashi Hitaki, but I've known Naruto-kun since he was a young boy and he thinks of me as an uncle. Guy told them. Wait, Kakashi. Wasn't that the guy you lost at Came to Rock, Paper, Scissors too? Tenten asked. Naruto smiled under his mask. So what's the score? Is my dad ahead now? Kakashi may be ahead, but I will soon pull ahead of him and show him that the power of youth prevails over all, right Naruto? Guy said, and then noticed that Naruto was examining his fingernails. He looked up sharply. Huh? Oh, sorry, were you saying something, Uncle Guy? Guy face faulted at that and then jumped up. There's that hip and too cool attitude of your father. You should embrace the power of youth, Naruto. Neji just shook his head. He had seen this many times before, but still he had learned to enjoy the show when Naruto would act like Guy to get under his father's skin and then act like his father to do the same for Guy. It was also how he managed to convince the two adults into several competitions of his own choosing. He never forgot the one when they had to go from one end of the village to another balancing an egg on their noses, or the time he suggested wrestling a muddy pig. It's always the same with them, Neji sighed. Neji, how do you know this guy anyway? Tenten asked. He's friends with my cousin Hinata for years and well, he's sorta become a friend of the Hyuga clan, he explained to the weapons girl. Tenten was wondering how the kid managed to do that. It was rare for any clan to admit friendships to someone outside of the clan, and the Hyugas were no exception to that. Naruto, I want to introduce to you one of my prize pupils, this is Rock Lee. Guy said, introducing a young boy that looked almost exactly like a younger version of Guy. The boy had been waiting for the right moment to jump in and to introduce himself. I am Rock Lee and I'm honored to meet a family member of Guy Sensei. Even if you are not related by blood, I can see the fires of youth burning bright inside of you. Lee proclaimed to him and giving him his own pose with blinding smile and a thumbs up. Naruto looked at the boy for a moment before turning to Guy with a deadpan expression on his face. Uncle Guy, have you been performing illegal cloning experiments on yourself? Is he your secret love child or something, or did you turn someone normal into a copy of you? Tenten starting into fits of giggles, and Neji had a small smirk on his face with that one. Naruto, although I wish Lee was my child, sadly he is not, but he is a true genius of hard work just like you are, Naruto. Guy told him. At that, Lee's eyes lit up with fire. Naruto, is it true that you are a genius of hard work? There are many geniuses like Neji here who are gifted with talents for being a ninja, but then there are those of hard work that Guy Sensei says work hard to surpass others. Naruto scratched the back of his head. Well, that's what Uncle Guy always tells me, but I have to work hard if I want to be Hokage one day. Ah, that is a worthy dream. You truly are inspired to reach for great heights. My dream is to be a great ninja, even though I can't use ninjutsu or genjutsu, but I will not let that handicap me, and I will show them all that I will be a great ninja. Wait, you can't use either? Naruto asked and learned of how Rock Lee's chakra coils were abnormally underdeveloped to the point he couldn't use them like a normal ninja. He listened, and yet this boy trained his heart out in taijutsu, and knowing Guy he was training hard. Well, I guess then we have something in common then. I have abnormally large chakra reserves, or so my dad says, and he says that it also causes me to have the worst chakra control he's seen. It's hard for me to do the simple things because of all the chakra in my body. I still can't do a simple clone yet, and it took me forever to learn the other things. But I work hard to overcome that, and I will reach my dream of being Hokage. Tenten sighed. Great, now we got another one. I wouldn't dismiss Naruto just yet, he's not your normal or average ninja, Neji said to her, and she looked at him surprised. You see, when he was a small boy he managed to save my cousin from a kidnapping attempt and gravely injure a ninja. He also took a kunai to the chest and lived. Tenten's eyes widened at that and looked at the boy who was being challenged to a spar by Lee and who seemed excited for it as well. She was trying to figure out the puzzle that was Naruto Hatake, and she and Neji watched as Lee got into his usual fighting pose and Naruto got into one fighting poses that his father taught him. Guy of course was being the referee at this point, and he called the match a go. Naruto leapt out first as Lee stood his ground. Naruto threw a punch only to have it intercepted, so he twisted with a kick and Lee jumped back. Naruto didn't stop though, he had to keep Lee moving and guessing as he tried to see what kind of fighter he was. Thanks to some training from Guy himself, he knew a bit of the style that Lee was using, but obviously Lee knew a lot more about it than he was. There was also something that caught his attention as they fought, and that was that Lee was really fast. He was definitely faster than he was, and when he felt a blow land there was some serious power to it. Naruto took a hit to his shoulder and went with a roll to take the shot and jumped back up facing Lee. It was times like this he wished he knew some offensive justice, but all he had was the training things like tree climbing and the academy stuff, with the exception of clones. Tenten and Neji watched with interest as Naruto took the pounding by Lee but just kept on going. In fact, Naruto managed to get Lee with an elbow strike to the ribs at one point when Lee left an opening for Naruto. Neji watched, knowing that Naruto trained a lot and with different teachers. He could see the influence in his fighting style, which was a mix of various moves from Kakashi, Guy's own style, and what he assumed was from that woman Enko who really gave Neji the creeps. Tenten was impressed that a boy still in the academy was holding out so long against Lee. She had to admit the blonde certainly was giving Lee a workout, and she noticed that as the battle went on Naruto seemed to find more and more weaknesses in Lee's style. It wasn't much to give him an edge, but it did allow Naruto to dodge and get out of the way of the more powerful moves now and again. Man, how come you're so fast, Lee? I mean, I train a lot but I'm not that fast, Naruto said, ducking a whirlwind kick to his head. Guy-sensei has me on a special training regiment that increases my speed and strength, Lee said, dodging a few aerial kicks by Naruto. Hey Uncle Guy, how come you never tried that with me? Naruto asked him while fighting. Guy smiled and chuckled a bit. I did, but your father thought it was too much. Oh, how so? Ow. What the hell? Naruto had went for a block with a kick from Lee by kicking the boy's shin, but instead of flesh and bone there seemed to be something else covered by the orange leg warmers. Naruto was hoping on one foot, holding his shin, cursing as Lee stopped in respect. I'm sorry Naruto, I didn't meant for you to hit my leg weights. Leg weights? What kind of leg weights do you have on? Naruto asked, rubbing his shin. Lee looked to Guy and the man nodded his head, and so Lee pulled up the leg warmers and Naruto's jaw dropped. There was a huge set of weights hidden there, actual bricks of metal, and Naruto was thankful he didn't break his leg on it. Then another thought hit him as he saw the weights. In order to move as fast as he was without those weights he would destroy him within seconds. For the first time Naruto had met someone that was way above him, at least in speed and strength, that he would need to surpass. He made a mental note to talk to his father about weights for himself, although he didn't think he could handle those, at least not yet. Shall we stop for now, Naruto-kun? Lee asked him, although he was enjoying the fight. Naruto fought with such passion and intensity. It was very different from how Neji fought, always so controlled and centered. If Neji was a mountain, then Naruto was like the wind, and he had seen how Naruto refused to give up at all and only came back with more force and determination. He truly was a genius of hard work, and he wanted to see how much more Naruto could put into his fight. Naruto tested his leg and got back into his stance. Are you kidding? I'm only warming up. I'll just have to remember not to hit that part of your leg again. With that, both boys smiled and started their sparring match again under the watchful eye of the Guy, Tenten and Neji. Naruto tried every move he could think of, but so far nothing he had seemed to be able to put the other boy down. At one point he managed to duck, then roll under the older boy, and with a kick to the ground launched himself behind Lee, but Lee was prepared and grabbed Naruto's wrist and arm and flung him into the nearby trees. When Naruto was thrown into a tree, he thankfully had landed feet first and stuck there. He was glad all those months of practice and training with the tree climbing managed to stick him finally. He jumped off when Lee's fist made contact with the spot he had been at, shattering the wood. He flipped into the air and with a mid-air twist landed facing Lee. How the hell am I going to beat this guy? He's like a mini guy, and it's not like my dad has given me any justice that I can use on him. Hell, I only know of a couple and they wouldn't work on Lee. Damn it, Dad, why the hell couldn't you have taught me a fire one like Sasuke has? The only thing I have left is... Naruto suddenly got a brilliant idea into his head and went into a familiar hand sign. Neji saw this and he groaned and covered his face with his hand. He had seen this before and he didn't need to be reminded of it. Oh no, please, not that stupid thing. What's he going to do? Tenten asked him. She watched and then Naruto yelled out a name that she thought was Sexy Jutsu, but she swore she heard wrong. Then there was a puff of smoke and suddenly a very cute naked girl in smoke suddenly appeared. Lee froze in his spot as his young and innocent mind saw his first naked girl. He literally couldn't even think as his mind just stopped at the image. Guy yelled out in horror at the sight of it and Tenten looked mortified. Everything she had thought about the young boy was suddenly dashed at this blatant perverted act. She held onto her kunai very hard and was trying not to throw it at the boy. Naruto dispelled it and quickly sent a jab into Lee's chin, making the boy fall onto the ground with a stupid look on his face. Well, Naruto knew it was a cheap shot, but he honestly didn't know any other way to beat the older boy. He went over to make sure there were no hard feelings, but the boy just didn't respond to him. He prodded him with his foot and still Lee was there on the ground with that stupid look on his face. Oh, I think I broke him. Hey man, you okay? He picked him up by the shoulders, shaking him. Naruto. From that loud and deadly tone from Tenten, he dropped Lee and slowly looked around to see a very pissed off girl. She was suddenly having a small twitch in her left eye. What the hell kind of jutsu was that? Do you know how perverted and also how offensive that is to female ninjas? No, not really, Naruto said and quickly dodged a kunai being thrown at him. Thankfully Anko gave him plenty of practice with avoiding. Wait, let me explain. Will you stop throwing those? Come on Tenten, it was just a joke. Hey, that one nearly hit. How many weapons do you have on you anyway? Die, you pervert. Neji signed as he looked at Guy was trying to snap Lee out of his catatonic state and at Tenten trying to kill Naruto. He looked to the ground as his shoulders slumped. This was why I didn't want to introduce Naruto to my team. He's nothing but pure chaos. Chapter 18. Preparations for the test. It was nearly the day of the final exams, the day they would all be ninja, and the kids were kind of excited over it all. But there was one person that was actually worrying, and that was Naruto of all people. He and his friends had been training all this time to make sure they all passed, as they were in a special training spot in the woods that Naruto had found a few years ago. There was a cabin where they could keep supplies and plenty of space to train. But Naruto, however, was having a large amount of difficulty with the one jutsu that would make him pass the test. He had his physical skills down now, and it took over a week for him to get the henge just right, but now he was having a lot of trouble with making clones. Whenever he tried it, they came out sickly and just lay there on the ground looking like death. He tried and yet he couldn't get it to work right. He was currently in the area with his friends and once again was trying to make a clone. There was the puff of smoke and he looked to his right hoping that this time he got it, but it was just another failed clone there. Damn it, why the hell can't I get this? Naruto shouted out in frustration. Naruto, what the hell is wrong with you? Ino asked, hands on her hips. She had changed her style over the years. Her hair was longer now into a ponytail and wore purple. Are you just messing around or what? I'm not, Ino, it's hard. I did it after 2 days, so why can't you do it? Ino asked, getting irritated with her friend. How can you be so good in so many things and yet suck so much at other things? I don't know, if I did I would figure out a way around it already. Naruto sighed and slumped his shoulder, feeling a little depressed. I'm still surprised you can still try and make clones. I'd be too tired to stand with how long you've been at it. Ino sighed as she sat down on the ground. Shikamaru, who was as usual on the ground, turned his head to face Naruto as something clicked in his head. In all the time that he had known Naruto he seemed to have nearly unlimited energy and he was wondering is his chakra mirrored that. Naruto, how much chakra as you using? Naruto scratched the back of his head thinking about it. I don't know, I just use whatever I can. Naruto, chided Sakura at him, you have to use a set amount for clones, didn't you pay attention to that in class? Sakura had also grown over the years, she chided Naruto at times and she kept him in line. The young crush she had on the boy was still there but she wasn't sure if she liked Naruto as a friend or more these days. It didn't help matters that Naruto seemed to have taken up a slightly perverted side that annoyed her to no end. Her hair was still short, she had thought of making it long like Ino since she heard Sasuke liked long-haired girls but she had asked him if she looked better with long hair, he only grunted and walked off. Naruto had commented that she looked cute with short hair so she went with Naruto since he was honest about these things. Okay, so he could be really sweet when he wasn't being an idiot or perverted. Sometimes she wondered why the top two boys in the class had to be so difficult. Sasuke was handsome and intelligent, strong and cool. But he was so cold to everyone and you couldn't get close to him. Naruto was the opposite of that, he radiated warmth and made you smile. Too bad he sometimes was too hyper. His pranks were childish even though she did find a few of them very funny, and the aforementioned moments of being an idiot and perverted. It was like Naruto was the sun and Sasuke was the moon and sometimes she felt that both were just unattainable. Why can't both boys be more like the other? She thought to herself. Yeah, that would be great if they were one boy. They would be totally hot. Inner Sakura agreed. Sakura mentally sighed and wondered if this inner persona was the result of some childhood trauma making her have a partial case of multiple personality syndrome. Hey Hinata, why don't you see how much chakra he's using with your eyes? Sakura asked the shy girl as the idea hit her. I mean, maybe you can tell how much he's using and he can use that as a way to help him judge how much he's using. That's actually a good idea, Shikamaru said, sitting up slightly. With a baseline, Naruto might finally be able to tell how much chakra he's using for once. Cool. Come on Hinata, let's see if you can help me out. Naruto said, smiling at the young girl. If only he knew what his smile even behind the mask did to her. She gulped, feeling a little bit of pressure. She really wanted to help Naruto after all, she owed him so much and she wanted him to see her as maybe more as a friend. Over the years her affection for Naruto had grown over time. He had been there through her long hard period after her mother's death, spending a lot of time with her and helping her out. Sometimes he would even hug her when she was feeling low, although that caused her to blush very much and nearly pass out from all the happy feelings that made. He also helped her with Hanabi too. Although Hanabi was 5 years her junior, she was very strong for her age, and Hinata was a bit envious that she was that strong. Her father had hardened a bit over the years, he never really smiled anymore, but with her uncle around he wasn't as bad as he might have been. She had been afraid that her mother's death would have hit him so hard that he would have never recovered, and in a way he never had. It was like most of the light in his life was gone and she felt sad for her father. He never showed it, but she knew that he was hurting every day that she was gone. She faced Naruto and made a hand seal and activated her eyes. She saw the world in black and white like a photo negative, and for the people she could see their chakra network, the blue lines that ran over their bodies. She watched as Naruto gathered up his chakra and she saw it was too much. Wait Naruto-kun, that's too much. She told him and he stopped. Huh, that's too much? He asked her confused and she nodded her head. He sighed and tried it again, but again she told him he was using too much. This went on for 5 more times before Ino was getting very frustrated with this whole affair. Damn it, just use as little chakra as you can. Ino yelled out, losing her patience. That is the least amount that I can use, Ino. What do you think I've been trying? He yelled back at her. Hinata, how much was that? Sakura asked the young girl, wondering just how much chakra Naruto had. Hinata began playing with her fingertips, looking down, about twice what Ino uses normally. Ino's eyebrows shot up from that, as did Shino and Shikamaru's. He's using twice as much as me normally. How the hell can he use that much, and that's the small amount? Okay, sure, I don't have the most amount, but I still got an average amount, and you're telling us that he's using double. Hinata nodded her head. Shikamaru sighed. Man, what a drag, no wonder you can't get this, Naruto. Until you learn how to limit the amount you use, I doubt that you'll ever get the chance to actually use it properly. You need a low amount to make a clone, that's one of the reasons they teach us this move. But if you use too much it won't work, so that means. Yeah, it means what? Naruto asked him. You're screwed, and with that he laid back onto the ground. Naruto looked at his friend and heard Kiba snicker at the comment. He shot Kiba a glare before glaring at the lazy boy. That's it. I'm screwed, that's all you can say. Well, what do you want? I can't make it so you can use less chakra, and I don't know how you can do it without a lot of practice and training. He responded. But the test is at the end of the week, that's only 4 days, I'll never get it down by 4 days. Given how long it took him to learn how to tree climb, learning a whole new way of controlling his chakra in the given amount of time was nearly impossible. He was really worried that because of this he wouldn't be able to graduate with the others, and he really wanted to become a ninja along with all his friends. Hinata saw the worry in him and wished that she could have done more to help him. She was wondering what she could do to help him, and then an idea entered her mind. They weren't that experienced, but there were others that were, and perhaps that Naruto's father would have some ideas. Naruto-kun, what about your father? Would he have any ideas on how to do this? She asked him. Naruto looked shocked, but it was just that he felt stupid with not asking his dad sooner. He beamed at her and quickly jumped over to her and gave her a huge hug. Hinata-chan, you're the best. He didn't hear the soft, eep sound that she made when he grabbed her, or how she was blushing bright red. She felt lightheaded with him hugging her like this, and it felt nice as well. She could feel his warm body pressed up against hers and the warmth of the emotions even. It felt so good, and she wished she could move her arms to hug him back. A part of her mind wanted to hug him back so much, and much more as well. She had dreams like this. First the hugging would come, and then he would look into her eyes with those bright blue and wonderful eyes of his. He would tell her how beautiful and strong she was and that he loved her. She could tell him that she loved him too, and he would gently pull down his mask and she would see that cute face with the whisker marks on it again. He would smile, that smile of his that melted her heart and made her legs shake, and their lips would gently touch. But as soon as it happened it was gone. The hug ended, and so did her little daydream with it, and Naruto was running off to see his father. Hinata, however, was swaying back and forth, feeling all warm from his embrace, and a smile was on her face, from the hug and from her own thoughts she had just had. Naruto-kun, she said softly before he fainted and landed onto the soft grass. Kiba and Shino went to her quickly, as did Choji, as they made sure that she was okay. Ino sighed and shook her head. Boy, that girl has it bad for him. Should we tell him that his best friend is a huge crush on him, because I honestly don't know when he'll figure it out. It's too troublesome. Shikamaru sighed, thinking on just what it would take to get Hinata to admit to her own feelings, let alone to Naruto. Gave him a headache just thinking about it. Everyone knew about Hinata's crush on Naruto with the exception of the blonde. As they helped her up, Sakura had a worried look on her face. She did like Naruto, but she didn't want to hurt Hinata given that she was a close friend. She had nearly lost her friendship with Ino over Sasuke, but thanks to Naruto smoothing things out between them, they were still friends. She still wore the red ribbon Ino had given her years ago, and yes, they both chased after Sasuke from time to time, but Sakura's attention was split, so it wasn't with her whole heart that she went after Sasuke, and Ino guessed that meant less competition for the dark boy's affections. Not that Ino or any other girl seemed to get any. Naruto made a joke about him being gay, and both Ino and Sakura had hit him for it. Plus the other girls of the Uchiha fan club gave him death glares for even suggesting that the boy they all crushed on was gay, and they had no chance whatsoever with him. At any rate, until her heart was made up, she had no idea which boy to go after, but she wouldn't lose a friendship over it. She watched as Choji and Shino trying to wake the young girl up, and if she chose to go after Naruto she would give the young girl a fight, but she would be fair about it. She would give the other girl a chance to at least admit her feelings to the boy and see where it went. After all, maybe Naruto would only like Hinata as a friend. But what if he likes us only as a friend? Inner Sakura said with a hint of worry. Sakura bit her lip but decided she could live with that. After all, there was still Sasuke after all. It took some time, but they managed to get Hinata to wake up, and she felt embarrassed over what had happened to her. She really wished she could stop doing that, but it was just so hard for her. Hinata walked home by herself, feeling slightly embarrassed that she had fainted like that in front of everyone, but it was just whenever Naruto was that close when he did things like that, it always made her heart pound so loud she could hear it and feel it. She just totally lost it, and she wished she could just gather the strength to tell him how she felt and to be able to not faint. She sighed. out of all of her friends she felt that she hadn't changed much. Although she had taken an interest in medicine shortly after her mother's death, but mainly just medical herbs and such things like that, she didn't want to become a medical nin. But a good idea on healing salves, potions and antidotes had become a new hobby for her. Sakura and Ino helped her with an herb garden on the Hyuga compound that she maintained to help her with that. Even Naruto helped out from time to time, much to her joy. She walked into her room taking off her jacket that she had been wearing for a few years now. What no one knew was just how well developed the girl had become over the years, but she was too shy to show it, hence why she always wear large clothing, well that, and she felt it was just very comfortable as well. She heard someone walk up to her door and looked to see her younger sister Hanabi. She looked very much like their mother hand, although she could see a bit of their father in her. She looked like she had just finished a training routine. Hanabi was always training very hard. She knew it was in part from their father trying to ensure his daughters were strong in life, but also she suspected it was because Hanabi didn't want to be put into the branch family like their uncle had been. There might have been some animosity in them, but there wasn't. They weren't as close as she would have liked, as Hanabi acted a lot like their father, so she reserved herself a lot of the time. "Hello Nei-chan." "Hello Hanabi-chan, how was practice with uncle?" "He was helping me with forms today. It was hard, but he says that I've been improving a lot lately." Hanabi then noticed some dirt on Hinata's jacket and she tilted her head a bit. "Were you training as well, sister?" Hinata looked confused, and then Hanabi pointed out the dirt and she grew bright red seeing the dirt there from when she had fallen onto the ground. "IWW was with my friends and ISS sort of fell." Hanabi knew what that meant, having seen it happen before. "You really should tell Naruto Nisan how you feel." Hanabi had known Naruto all her life, and even though she had never seen what was behind that mask, he was always there for her big sister and her. She could remember Naruto and Hinata looking after her and even training with her. He was also one of the few people that could make her laugh or smile with his antics. He was always there, and over the years she thought of him as the big brother she didn't have. It was also painfully obvious that her older sister had feelings for him, and she secretly wished that they would get together. Although she didn't like boys, Naruto was another story. He was good to her family, and her sister obviously looked up to him and was totally smitten by him. Plus, if Hinata and Naruto got married, then he really would be her older brother, even if her brother-in-law. Hinata looked down as she did that thing with her fingers again. I want to tell him, but what if he doesn't feel the same? I know he kind of likes SS Sakura, and he's got all those other girls after him, and they're stronger and prettier than I am." Hanabi hated it when her sister got like this. It honestly just pissed her off. "Where is your Hyuga pride, sister? You are a Hyuga of the main family and the heiress of our clan. You are above those others girls, and you should show it. If you want Naruto Nisan, then take him as yours as if it were your right. If he doesn't feel the same, then he's an idiot for turning down a Hyuga, since we don't give our hearts to those outside the clan freely." Hinata felt a bit ashamed, and not for the first time she wished that Hanabi was the heiress and not her. Hanabi, even though younger, was more confident and stronger and would make for an excellent leader. But she couldn't even get the courage to tell the boy she had liked for years that she liked him and wanted more than just friendship. Not for the first time she wished she was stronger, and that she wished her mother was still alive to go to and get advice from. She couldn't go to her father or uncle because it would be awkward for both parties. I just wish I knew I had a chance. I don't want to lose him," Hinata said in a low and soft voice. Hanabi heard it anyway and sighed. "If you don't do something, you'll lose him anyway." Hitaki home. Kakashi was sitting at home reading one of his novels again. He loved the books. Yes, they did have some dirty adult content, but that was besides the point. Well, okay, it was also a big selling point as well, since he had learned some very interesting techniques from the book. Hard to believe that the writer of these books was the sensei to his sensei. But then again, he remembered a few times when Minato tried to act a bit perverted around his then girlfriend and later future wife. The poor blonde man never knew what hit him sometimes. He sighed remembering them, and he hoped that he was doing well by Naruto. He wanted to protect Naruto more than anything, and not just because it was out of duty and loyalty for the man that had been like a second father to him. He honestly did love Naruto like a son. It was strange, but Naruto helped him to ease away the loneliness of his life had become. With his two best friends and teammates killed, his father dead, and then his teacher, his life had been so empty. He booked down his book remembering his birthdays, how the Hokage sometimes liked to have Naruto in his office to babysit while he had been on a mission. Naruto said he liked it because he could learn how to become a Hokage himself one day. He remembered the first time he met Hinata and he could see the bond that had formed over the years with those two. But Naruto had lots of friends now and an extended family as well. He had to admit things were never dull in his life, although he did like the quiet moments such as now. A sudden banging sound of the front door was heard all over the home and Naruto's loud voice calling out to him. Kakashi sighed knowing that the only quiet he would get when Naruto was at school. He casually walked to find his son running through the house looking for him. "Dad, I need you help with something important." "What is it, son?" Kakashi asked him. "I can't do a clone because I can't use as little chakra as the other kids, but I need to make a clone or else I won't graduate and I want to pass with all my friends. Can't you teach me something that will help me pass?" "Come on, there's got to be some trick you can help me use less chakra or something. How about some type of restraining chakra thing, or maybe some kind of jutsu that can get me around it?" Kakashi blinked, wondering how he could have said all that in a rush in just one lung full of air. He shook his head and started to think about it. He knew this issue would come up. Naruto's chakra control was bad at the best of times, but he had gained more control now after years of practice. But he still had trouble with the simpler stuff because of the limited amount of chakra you needed to put into it. Basically, it was like trying to force a ton of water through a small pipe. Kakashi knew that the test was coming up and he didn't want to see Naruto fail. But in order to get his chakra control that good would take a lot longer than he needed to train Naruto for this. If only there was a way around doing a simple clone. Then an idea hit him. "Naruto, you said that it's a clone test, right?" Kakashi asked him and the blonde nodded his head quickly, looking up expectantly. "Any type of clone at all?" Naruto thought about that one. All Iruka-sensei said was the tests would be physical skills outside, then a written one, a henge, and finally a clone, but he didn't say what kind. "Hey, are there different kinds of clones?" Kakashi nodded his head. "Yes there are, and I could teach you one, but you have to understand, Naruto, this clone isn't the typical one. It can be dangerous and no one your age should even attempt it, but with your high concentration of chakra you might just be able to pull this off." Kakashi wasn't kidding about this being dangerous, but desperate times called for desperate measures. He had been hoping that Naruto would have gotten enough control to do a simple clone, but it looked like he might have to teach him this one. He could use another type of clone than the one he had in mind, but in all honesty he felt that Naruto could learn it. Besides, there was a bit of his pride telling him how great it would be for his son to learn such a high-level jutsu in such a short time. "It's going to be a lot of hard work, Naruto, and if you can't handle it I'll call it off, understood?" he said in all seriousness. Naruto looked up at him, not backing down from his challenge. "I can do it, Dad. I don't care what it takes, I will pass and be a ninja and I'll make you proud of me." "I already am proud of you, Naruto," Kakashi thought to himself with a smile. "Alright then, let's get you started on training for the new clone technique. This Naruto is called the Shadow Clone Just You." Chapter 19. The Final Test. It was early morning, but Naruto had been up for an hour anyway. It was still quiet, but that would soon change. For the past few days he had been training with his dad, and now he knew he could pass that test now for sure with his secret weapon that he had. It was also thanks to this secret weapon that would allow him to pull off the biggest prank of all time that this entire village would have seen in history. He didn't even want to think how long it would have taken him without the new jutsu. It would have taken him all night to do instead of 15 minutes tops. Naruto had gained several reputations over the years, but one that he was most prideful of was that of a prankster like no other. He really had a taste for it, and it didn't help that his father had a trickster side to him as well. Like the time he slipped firecrackers into Guy's vest, or the time his dad placed a stuffed life-sized fake replica of himself during a meeting that he skipped out on. Apparently it took 5 minutes after the meeting for people to realize it wasn't him, since it was holding a copy of one of his famous books in front of the face. But with his life of a ninja ahead of him, Naruto knew that he would have to put away the pranks for a while, maybe even for a long time, since he would be too busy for it. But if that was the case, then he wanted to go out with a bang with the biggest one in history. Everyone would remember this day, and it would be something that would be talked about for generations. He grinned to himself as he added the last bit of paint and was wondering how long before the first ninja showed up to get the one responsible for it. It turns out he didn't have to wait long after the sun rose when people got up and saw what he had done. Enko was one such person. She had gotten up and went right for her morning coffee. She was not a morning person and liked to sleep in. She yawned as she waited for the coffee to get ready, trying not to fall asleep at her kitchen table. When she finally had her cup, she walked past one of her windows but then froze. Her sleep-fogged mind could have swore what she had just seen outside of her window couldn't have been real. She took a quick step back, took a look and spit out her coffee out the window. What the hell? She yelled out, seeing the Hokage monument all painted up. There were childish marks all over it in various paints. It took her only a moment to realize who had the balls to pull something like that off, and she just started to laugh her ass off. She literally fell on her ass laughing and holding her stomach as she spilled her coffee, but she didn't care. She was awake now. Oh god, that kid is too much. I swear if the kid lives I'll buy him a drink when he gets to be the right age, she laughed to herself. She wasn't the only one to see it. Hinata was still asleep when Hanabi burst into her room. Hinata, you have to see it. See what? Hinata muttered, rubbing her eyes. Someone painted on the Hokage faces. Hanabi told her, and Hinata wasn't sure she had heard her younger sister correctly. She quickly put on a robe and ran out with her sister, where her father, uncle, cousin and other members of the family were standing outside staring at the paint all over the most prized monument of the entire village, something that gave tribute to their greatest leaders, a sense of pride, and it was all painted over by childish scribbles. Who on earth would do such a thing? Hiyashi asked out loud. His twin brother smirked as an idea came to him. Ask yourself this, brother. What masked person do we know that has a reputation for pranks and would have the gall to do something like this? Hiyashi sighed and pinched the bridge of his nose. He should have known this had Naruto's flair all over it. He was surprised that boy would pull something like this off. He would assume the boy had at least some respect for adults and his elders, but then again, he did keep calling the Hokage old man all the time, and he was sure he purposely mistook him and his brother all the time on purpose. Neji signed and hung his head. He wasn't sure if he should be impressed that Naruto pulled this off or turn him in if he saw him. Hanabi and Hinata didn't know what to think. Although it was pretty funny, they both knew that Naruto would be in so much trouble when they caught up to him. I wonder if they caught him yet. Hanabi voiced as Hinata looked worried and bit her lip. Their uncle was curious and activated his bloodline and scanned the area. He had a small smile on his face. Well, that is certainly surprising. Again, he's being chased by at least a dozen Jonins and Chunins. Hiyashi activated his eyes as well and saw them chasing Naruto, and the boys seemed to be having fun giving them the run around. Then he noticed something else. They weren't chasing just one Naruto. He looked closer and his head snapped back as he realized what he was seeing. It should have been impossible, but there was one thing he had learned with Naruto, and it was that nothing seemed impossible for the boy. I can't believe he's using that technique, he said as his twin nodded his head. Seeing exactly the same thing, that boy is full of surprises. Yes, certainly makes things interesting, doesn't it, brother? He said, smiling as Neji looked confused at his father, wondering just what was going on here. He tried his own eyes, but he didn't see the big deal, at least at first, until he noticed it too. Hanabi and Hinata didn't have the range just yet to see what was going on, but they could tell that something that Naruto was doing had their attention. Others were already waking up to the chaos that would be talked about for years to come. Ino had walked out of her home and stopped dead at the sight, her jaw dropping. Sakura was mirroring this from her window and wondered what possessed Naruto to do some of this stuff sometimes. Although she would never admit it, it was kind of funny. Shino just raised an eyebrow, but beneath his coat he was smirking. Choji nearly choked on his food when he saw it, and Shikamaru had been cloud watching. He had took one look, said how troublesome it was, and just went back to his clouds trying to drown out the noises. Kiba was of course laughing his ass off at this. He couldn't believe Naruto did that, but he had to admit it was the ultimate prank. Sasuke had been on a morning jog until he saw all of this. He palmed his face, wondering why Naruto had to be such an idiot at times. Although that was pretty impressive but totally useless. If Naruto put all that effort into his training, he could have been a great ninja. Sasuke just shook his head and started off on his run. After several hours, Naruto had finally been caught. By all people, his teacher and boy Iruka was pissed at him. Naruto had to clean the entire mountain up before school and it took a while since he didn't want to ruin the surprise. Thankfully he used a water-based paint figuring this might happen. He tried this once before with real paint and had to wash that off and it took forever and that had just been a wall. This was a mountainside. So by the time Naruto got to school he was already tired and his hands ached, but he was smiling under his mask. He could already see many of the people talking about him, but he didn't care. He liked any attention and this was a day that no one would forget. There he is. Naruto jumped at the sound of a pissed off Ino and looked to see her storming towards him with her friends in tow. "Oh hey there Ino-chan, how are things?" he asked innocently. "Don't you Ino-chan me Buster, what the hell were you thinking doing that? You want to get in trouble on the last day of school?" Ino said, punching him in the arm. He winced from the blow. It was thanks to Ino and sometimes Sakura that he learned that just because someone was a girl didn't mean they didn't punch hard. Naruto, honestly that was a bit overboard. Sakura chided him. She really didn't want to see him kicked out before he made ninja. All that hard work would be for nothing and she didn't want to see him fail. Personally I think it was funny as hell. Kiba laughed and then got a fist to the top of his skull by Ino and Sakura. "Don't encourage him," both girls yelled out as he fell to the ground holding his skull. Akamaru whimpered at his heels, not going to bark at the girls as he was smart enough to know that when they got like this it wasn't smart to get in their way. "Hey, I just wanted to go out with a bang as a ninja. I won't be able to do anything like that anymore," Naruto tried to explain. "Besides I cleaned it all up." "That's not the point Naruto, you could have been seriously punished," Sakura told him. He rubbed the back of his head. "Yeah okay, I'm sorry, but still it was pretty cool." That earned him a smack to the head as he was now on the ground like Kiba as both Ino and Sakura walked into the school angry, leaving the others behind. Shino didn't say anything. He just shook his head and sighed as he walked into the school. Sometimes his friends should learn when to keep quiet. Naruto eventually made his way inside, rubbing his head. He saw Ino arguing with a few girls on who would sit next to Sasuke again. He should have seen that happen, and the fact a few girls were giggling at him and waving him over to their seats as well. He sweat dropped at this. He gave a weak wave back and looked to see that there was a chair with Hinata and Sakura, which he was thankful for. He was safe with them from the fangirls. He didn't know how Sasuke could handle the mob that followed him around since Naruto only had half the number. Apparently being the bad boy, as well as totally mysterious, was all some girls needed. He sighed seeing Sasuke enter the front of the class and walk up to him. Naruto smiled at his rival, got up closer. "Hey Sasuke, did you see my greatest prank of all time? Why must you waste your time with such idiotic things?" He sighed and shook his head. How a boy like him got to be the only one that could challenge him was beyond the Avonger's understanding. "Ah, you're just jealous that I did something that you could never do." Naruto waved it off, throwing in his too cool attitude of his father in there. It didn't work as well on Sasuke like it did on Guy, but it usually got some kind of annoyed reaction out of the young Uchiha. What both boys didn't notice, however, was that the argument with the girls got to the point when shoving started to happen, and one unfortunate girl next to Ino had been pushed by another girl and fell backwards. That wasn't so terrible for her as he slammed into Naruto's back, but this also had a domino effect as Naruto pitched forward and face first into Sasuke as they landed on the ground. In that moment it was dead silence as the entire class watched as Naruto and Sasuke's faces were pushed together. Jaws were dropped everywhere. Some of the girls looked like they wanted to cry from not being the first one the boys kissed, although a couple were getting nosebleeds as their inner Yoi fangirl side went into overload. Naruto jumped off the boy as both started to nearly retch. "Oh god, I knew it. I knew you were gay. I've been violated by the Uchiha." Naruto yelled out, trying to spike and still keep his mask on. Had never been so glad to wear a mask in his life as it helped to keep the feeling of that violation, as he refused to call it a kiss. He knew he would be having nightmares about this for a long time, and from the way Kiba was laughing his ass off he would never hear the end of this. "Me? I'm the one who was violated, you perverted masked idiot." Sasuke shot back. "You're the one that slammed into me and was on top." "Oh hell no, I bet you planned that whole thing. Why else have you turned down every girl in school?" "Because I don't like any of these girls, you idiot. I want to rebuild my clan, but you think I'll just choose anyone. I'm an Uchiha and I have standards to hold up to, unlike you, and since when have you ever been on a date in your life?" Naruto didn't like the argument being thrown back into his face. "Oh yeah, well I'd kiss any girl here if I wanted to, if that would prove I'm not gay. What about you?" At this point the girls were all up asking to be the one to help prove to the boys that they weren't gay to the other boy. Sure, they wouldn't have the first ever kiss, but they would want to have the first kiss they got from a girl. Although Sasuke's words had hurt a bit and deflated several daydreams of winning over the Uchiha's heart, the chance to kiss the boy was just too good to pass up. Also, many wanted to see what Naruto's face looked like, as well as that was one of the biggest mysteries in the school. Even Shino's face was seen from time to time with the exception of his eyes. Thankfully that was when Iruka and Mizuki walked in. The two teachers quickly got their class back into order, although Naruto and Sasuke kept giving each other death glares. Iruka sighed, wishing it would be a quick day. After the years his group would finally graduate and he was looking forward to the break before the next school course started up. The tests were simple enough, written exam for their final marks to test their theory knowledge, then it was on to the practical stuff. He started off the tests and then it was just a waiting game. He wasn't surprised when Sakura was the first one done, of course. Mizuki, however, even though he kept a smile on, he secretly detested this village. His old master Orochimaru had left him behind, as he had taken Anko of all people all those years ago. He still was angry that he had chosen her over him, and then she returns with no memory and that cursed seal and techniques. The woman didn't even use the gift that Orochimaru had given her, and she was a special Jonin while she was stuck in the Chunin ranks. He deserved more, to be promoted out of this school, but his skills and abilities were always overlooked. Here he was teaching a bunch of brats when the real ninjas got to go on missions and prove their strength to the world. Strength is what mattered in this world, and knowledge of jutsus, that was what he learned from his sensei, and he took it to heart. But he was denied the skills that Jonin got when they reached that level and could read the Forbidden Scroll for more powerful techniques and moves. He looked at the brats and internally he hated them, especially a certain few. There was the Uchiha boy who was given everything just because of what family he was born into. He was the last and his clan was crushed and gone, and yet they still treated him like a prince. He never liked that clan. Just because they were a founding member of the village they had been able to act tough and push others around. Then there were the Hyuga clan who were just as arrogant, and yet the little girl here was so weak it was pathetic. He knew though that she would eventually lead her clan just because of whose daughter she was, and it made him angry. She was guaranteed to go far just because of that as well, and because he was not from any clan he was overlooked. It seemed that as long as you were part of a clan the more things went your way and the more you were given. He knew it was rare for anyone else outside of a clan to get to Jonin rank. There was Kurenai who was recently promoted from Chunin just because of her clan, then there was the Hokage's chain-smoking son as well. Then he looked at the Yamanaka, Nara and Akamichi children and how their parents were heads of their own small clans. But there was another boy that stood out for him as well, and that was Naruto Hitaki. The Hitaki name had been put into disgrace, and yet Kakashi had pulled it out of the mud. Not a clan, but he was well respected, but only because of that damn eye he had. That was the only reason he made it so far in the village. The man was a lazy, perverted idiot, and yet he was considered one of the best only because of that stupid eye, and there was his son as well sitting there writing his test. After the failed Hyuga kidnapping incident, many knew that Naruto held the nine-tailed fox inside of him, and even though Mizuki knew that the boy was not the demon, he had been close enough to sense that power that night. He knew that the boy was given a great power inside of him, and yet he did nothing with it. Yet another person to get a gift, and why did the fourth pick him of all people? Mizuki hated how the village never respected him or gave him what he had earned, but being stuck at this school he couldn't gain any missions and he had asked to be put elsewhere, but that stupid old man of a Hokage had said he was more valuable here. Mizuki knew that the Hokage was just putting him aside just because he had no name to throw around. The children had finished their testing and it was time for the one-on-one. Iruka told the children to go outside and wait. He couldn't understand why his old friend was such a fool. The man actually wanted to stay in his place, but then again Iruka wasn't as good a ninja as he was. Never had been in his opinion, but he wasn't from some noble clan, so that was why he had stayed friends with him, even if Mizuki did think the man was naive. Outside the children waited for their tests. Many were worried about this since this was the final tests, the one that would prove them worthy to be ninjas, something they all had worked years to do. For Hinata, she was biting her lower lip in worry. She didn't want to fail and disappoint her family, but she was so nervous and thought that she might screw things up. She was so absorbed that she didn't notice someone walking up behind her until she felt a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Hey Hinata-chan, you okay?" Naruto asked, seeing how nervous she was. Oh. Naruto-kun, I'm just a little nervous. I don't want to fail. Hey, there's no way you'd fail. You're a great ninja and I know you can do this, so don't worry because I'm behind you. I know for a fact that you'll blow this test out of the water. He smiled behind his mask at her and she felt her heart beat faster thanks to his words. Hearing those kinds of words out of his mouth to her made her feel so warm inside, and she didn't want to disappoint him. She gave him a weak smile and nodded her head, feeling more confident. Her name was called after Ino came out of the room smiling brightly as she was carrying her own forehead protector. Naruto watched Hinata go with a smile and she looked back once and he nodded to her. She gave him a small smile back and walked into the room. Naruto waited and it was killing him inside. He was so eager to take this test and be a real ninja. He would be one step closer to being Hokage with this, and he would make his dad proud of him. Naruto Hitaki. Finally. About damn time. Naruto jumped up and went into the room with the two teachers. Okay Naruto, we want you to perform a transformation jutsu and then perform a clone, Ruruka said, and suddenly noticed that look in Naruto's eyes as his hands went to a hand seal that he dreaded. He slammed his hand onto the desk hard and fast. Naruto, don't even think of using that perverted jutsu you created. You're no fun and you seem to have enjoyed it last time I used it. Naruto whined as Ruruka blushed at the memory when Naruto pulled off that naked girl transformation of his. He couldn't have stopped the gusher of blood coming out of his nose if he had known it had been coming. Naruto sighed and went into a simple transformation as there was a puff of smoke and he turned himself into his father Kakashi with his book already out reading it. Not bad, looks just like him, Mizuki said. Yes, very good, go ahead and turn back Naruto, Ruruka said, but noticed that Kakashi only was still reading the book. Naruto turned back now. Just a second, I really like this point in the book, the Kakashi fake said, giggling like he usually did. Naruto, Ruruka said in warning, and Naruto dispelled it. Ruruka sighed and ran a hand through his hair. He swore Naruto was going to make him grow old before his time. Now perform the clone Naruto. Can it be any type of clone? Any type? Mizuki asked the boy. Yes, see, I have a problem. I can't perform a normal one cause my body has too much chakra, but my dad taught me a really cool one that's even better. Ruruka thought it over. There really was no rule on what type of clone it had to be. Okay Naruto, just make 3 clones and that will be fine. Alright. Naruto jumped up and went into the usual hand seals for a typical clone, only the last seal was different as it ended in a cross sign. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Both teachers were shocked when Naruto said that, as there were several puffs of smoke and suddenly there were not 3 but 12 shadow clones. Both teachers were shocked that a boy had learned a Jonin level move and seemed to be perfectly fine with no effects. Mizuki had to really try and keep his composure at this. Here he was a Chunin being outdone by a boy that wasn't even a ninja. He was taught a move that he had no right on learning, and there was only one person that would teach him that. Ruruka was torn between how impressed he was with Naruto and furious that Kakashi would teach such a dangerous move to his own son. But Naruto seemed to be fine, and so Ruruka smiled at him and stood up. Well, I have to say Naruto, you passed with flying colors. Yeah. All of the Naruto clones cheered and started to celebrate. Eventually he dispelled the clones and took his forehead protector with pride. He held it in his hands, grinning from ear to ear with this. It wasn't as heavy as he thought, but it was his and he had earned it. He couldn't wait to show it off and quickly tied it to his forehead and looked up at Ruruka and smiled behind his mask. Naruto walked out of the classroom and went into the yard to where his friends were. Hey guys, guess what? Naruto, you did it. Sakura said happily, seeing him with his forehead protector. She ran over to him along with the others. Ino and Sakura were the first to hug him, making him blush behind his mask as Kiba slapped him on the back a little too hard for Naruto's liking, but he let it slide. Shino simply nodded his head towards him and Shikamaru gave a small smile as Choji was doing all the talking to him. He noticed Hinata smiling as she was looking down, playing with her fingers with a slight blush on her face. Hey Hinata-chan, isn't this great? He said, walking over to her. Why yes it is Naruto-kun, I knew you'd do it. She looked up shyly at him, giving him a small smile. He smiled back at her, his eyes closed much like his dad did. Thanks Hinata-chan, that means a lot from you. She blushed deeply at that and her eyes sent to her feet as her cheeks got hot again from blushing even more so. The small group of friends were enjoying themselves, waiting for their parents to show up so they could all show off their new status as genin ninjas of their village. Only one person was watching from a window and that was Mizuki. He looked down at them but he didn't feel proud of them. In fact he was slowly starting to hate them all. He had been pushed to his limits with the Hitaki boy learning that move. This village obviously didn't appreciate him at all and had overlooked him for far too long. Maybe it was time to do what he had been thinking of for a while now and join his sensei Orochimaru. He obviously had the right idea leaving this village behind, but his old master would require something of value as proof of his skills and abilities. Slowly looking at the children, a small plan was starting to unfold, and perhaps he could not only gain something of value but ruin some revenge on the clans and those that always had everything given to them on a silver platter as well. Chapter 20, Mizuki's Plan. Naruto looked about as his friends all had their hitai atesh on various places. He was happy that all his friends were ninjas now and he couldn't wait to show it off to his dad, the two at the ramen stand, Anko, Guy and anyone else he could think of. He was so proud that he was a ninja and he was nearly ready to start jumping around all over the village on the rooftops shouting his lungs out that he was a genin. Unfortunately, knowing his dad, he was going to be late again, but he was just happy that he passed. He saw his other friends being congratulated by other family and it made him smile under his mask. "I see you passed too, Naruto," said a family voice behind him. He quickly turned to see Hinata with her father, uncle and Neji there. "Yeah, you got it, Hizashi-san," Naruto said, smiling and scratching the back of his head, although it was actually Hiyashi that was speaking to him, and once again he was fighting off the twitch that had been forming for years from Naruto constantly getting the two brothers mixed up. Of course Naruto knew which was which, but he liked to annoy them because railing a Hyuga was so much fun because of how much effort you had to put into it. He swore one of these days he would break through that Hyuga exterior. "Naruto," Hinata muttered, knowing her father and uncle hated that game of his. "Yes, Hinata-chan," he asked her innocently. Hiyashi just gave a low sigh and tried not to get a headache from stress at this point. "So did you do well, Naruto?" "You bet I used my super new jutsu that my dad taught me. I may even beat Sasuke Tem out of the Genin of the Year with it, and it will serve the arrogant bastard right if I did," Naruto said confidently. The Uchiha clan was very powerful. Naruto, their clan helped to form this village and is the last. He has much to prove, Hiyashi said to him, and he couldn't help to add in one more thing. "Besides, from what I hear, he was ahead of you in all the written tests, was he not?" Naruto's face soured at that. He was never very good at the written stuff and Hiyashi knew it. It was a small victory for the adult against the boy for once again mixing him up with his twin on purpose. His face had a small twitch again, but this was in the corner of his lips this time as he fought back a small smirk, as it would not be dignified. But still he was glad to get a shot in at the boy now and then, just to repay him for all the years he tried to get on the nerves of him and his brother and other Hyugas as well. "So Naruto, I take it Kakashi is running late again," Hizashi said to Naruto. Naruto grumbled something about buying his father a watch with preset alarms but just shrugged it off. He was used to his father being late all the time anyway. He knew that his father would be proud of him when he saw him later anyway. "So how did you do, Hinata-sama?" Neji asked his cousin. She blushed a bit as everyone started to look at her and she looked at the ground nervously playing with her fingers. I did well," Ruruka-sensei said. "I made 4th highest in the class." Her father frowned a bit as he thought about that. "I see. Well, I am glad that you passed, daughter, although I can see that the Uchiha boy and Naruto would most likely be in the top, but who else did you lose to?" Hinata winced as her father used to term lose, as she still couldn't beat her own little sister in sparring matches. She looked disappointed when she said that Sakura managed to get the top marks out of the kunoichi of the class, and she could see that her father was disappointed that she had been beat out by a girl that was not even from any clan and whose family had no known or famous ninja in it. Hinata was left feeling like she had let her father down. Although he never said anything about it, she could tell that he was. She knew that her clan had very high standards, and not making top of the class or even top kunoichi was just another sign of her weakness, and she wished she was better. She tried to train hard, but she could never bring herself to harm her friends or family in spars, and even though she wasn't stupid, she knew that Sakura was brilliant when it came to book smarts. She had beat out all the other girls, which did say something to her, but still being beaten by a non-clan member was something of a black mark against her. There was nothing wrong with coming from no clan, but those that were in clans, many felt that they had to be a bit above the rest, and the Hyuga clan took that to heart as they always tried to show just how powerful their clan was. Now with the Uchiha clan practically gone, they were the most powerful group in the village, and her showing weakness at this time she knew wasn't a good thing for her family. The elders of the clan still held enough power to place someone more worthy as heir, and she would have to be put into the branch family and have the bird cage seal placed on her like her cousin was forced to have put on him. Hinata hated that seal and wanted the practice stopped, but she had no power in her clan, and if she was removed into the branch then any hope of freeing her clan from that would be ruined. She needed to prove herself to the elders so she one day could help stop it. "Hey Hinata-chan, you okay?" Naruto asked, seeing her space out in thought. She jerked to attention, her cheeks blushing a bit. "Why yes, I'm fine, Naruto-kun." He looked a bit closer, making her cheeks a bit more brighter at how close he was. Naruto was just looking to see what was wrong with her. "Are you sure you're okay? I mean, you've been getting all red a lot and warm." He pressed a hand to her head to feel if she had a temperature. She froze at the contact and how her whole face was red. Her eyes widened, and before she could say anything she fainted, only this time forward and hit Naruto in his head with a headbutt. He gave a short outcry as he was hit and fell back, and Hinata, now dazed, fell back as her father caught her. He grimaced at the public display from his daughter and looked to see his brother looking over the dazed Naruto. "She really needs to get over that shyness of hers, brother," Hisashi stated, seeing that Naruto was okay. Hisashi nodded his head at that. It was painfully obvious that his daughter fancied the boy, and he guessed it was something that was bound to happen. The two of them had been childhood friends for years, and Hinata was very close to the boy, but being a Hyuga made such a thing difficult, as dating outside the clan was a very hard thing to earn. Normally the young couple would go to the head of the household or even to him for approval, and it wasn't easy. Anyone trying to get into the clan had to prove that they were worthy of the Hyuga that they were in a relationship with, but with Hinata the elders would have to take things over to prevent Hisashi from any favoritism in that matter. He would admit that Naruto had much potential, and the fact this father was a well-known and powerful ninja. It also didn't hurt that Kakashi had been the bane of the Uchiha clan for so long with his Sharingan eye of his. It wasn't spoken about, but many had delighted in the mighty Uchiha bloodline taken and used by another that wasn't of their blood, and had also used it far more effectively than any of their members. After a few minutes of waiting, the two children slowly started to wake up. Hinata was so embarrassed by her actions she could look Naruto in the eye, although he just shrugged it off and made light of it. "Hinata, we should go. I have work to do at the estate," her father told her. "And I should get back to my team. We have a training session in an hour," Neji said as his father nodded, as he had to go with his twin brother. Hinata nodded and then looked to see Naruto sitting on the swing, most likely just waiting to see if his father would show up or not. She didn't like how lonely he looked, as all the others had left with their families, and she bit her lip nervously. "I'm sorry, but may I stay with Naruto-kun until his father shows up?" Hisashi had a small raise in his eyebrow, but figured he could give his daughter that. After all, he knew that Naruto would see her home safely. He nodded his head to her and she happily ran off to join Naruto, and he stood to watch them, and deep down he was smiling at the two of them. He wished that his wife was alive to see this day, and he knew that he wanted her daughter to be happy and to be with Naruto, and he hoped that dream would come true. But she still needed to get stronger. He had lost his wife, but he didn't want to see his daughters die as well. That would surely kill him inside. He took one last look before turning and walking away. While the two children were together, there was another person who had been watching with interest, as Mizuki was grinning as he thought that he had the perfect opportunity. He had been watching, and seeing two of the children alone was a perfect setup. It also didn't hurt that it was the Hitaki boy and the high and mighty Hyuga girl as well. He had overheard the conversation with the father, and he knew Hinata well enough to judge her physical reaction. She was never very good at hiding how she felt. Also, those two were always together, so this would be even easier to make them both take the fall, as if one went the other would go along to help the other out. He walked over to the two children, putting on his friendly smile that he had been forced to wear all the time since he was forced into being a teacher. The two children looked at him and smiled back, and why wouldn't they? After all, he was one of their teachers, someone that had always been kind and helpful after all. "So how are you two doing?" Mizuki asked them, and they replied that they were doing good, and then he put on a slightly sadder look. "You know, Naruto, Hinata, it's a shame that you two didn't get any higher marks." Naruto, I'm sure your father would have been delighted to learn his son was Genin of the year like he had been in Hinata. I'm sure your father would have been very proud that you made top kunoichi as well. Both children looked a little discouraged at that, and Naruto looked up at him. "You mean I didn't beat Sasuke Tem?" Sorry Naruto, if only you had scored just a little higher in the written test. He saw the effect of that as Naruto's little rivalry with the Uchiha boy had been a strong one since their very first day together. Although there is a way for you two to earn some extra credit that could put you both over the top. But it's not easy and I wouldn't offer it unless you both felt you could do it. What? What is it, Mizuki-sensei? I can do anything and so can Hinata-chan, just watch us. Naruto jumped up, eager to prove himself better than Sasuke, and he also knew how badly that Hinata wanted to make her father proud. Mizuki looked thoughtful at the two of them for a moment. Well, I could set it up, but it's not easy and you can even lose marks off your grade after all. But if you both feel you can do this, then I can set it up with the Hokage. We'll do it, just tell us what we have to do. Naruto said before Hinata could voice her concerns over this. Well, the test is an old one, Mizuki explained to them. You see, if you and Sasuke had tied, it would have been given to you both as a tie-breaker, but as a teacher I can have a little leeway in this. You have to sneak into the Hokage tower using the skill you have learned and steal an old scroll used for this exam. The scroll is pretty old since it's been used for this exam for a very long time, as this helps prepare you for a possible mission as a ninja to steal secret documents. But the scroll will be guarded and you have to find a way to defeat the guards and take the scroll to a drop-off point, without being caught or followed. If you do, you fail the exam and marks are taken off your final grade. Now I will ask you both, are you sure you want to try for this special exam? I don't know about this, Naruto-kun. Something doesn't seem right, Hinata said to him. She had never heard of this before, but then again it was possible that she couldn't have known of such a thing did exist, but it seemed kind of strange to her. Why were only her and Naruto given this? Shouldn't Sakura and Sasuke also been given the chance, since that would be more fair? Come on Hinata-chan, we could make our parents proud of us if we do this. Think of what your dad and family will think of you if you make the top kunoichi in the class. Hinata bit her lip. She would love to make her father proud of her, and his earlier reaction played in her mind, and she wanted so much for him to say how proud he was of her. She wanted it so badly that she decided to go with whatever Naruto decided to pick. If he chose to do this, then she would go with him and help him out. After all the times he helped her, it was time she did the same for him. I'll do whatever you think is best, Naruto-kun. Alright, I knew I could count on you, Hinata-chan. Naruto shouted in joy and looked at his teacher. Alright, we're in. Good, Mizuki smiled at them. Then it will start in an hour. Now let me tell you more about your exam and where you'll be placing the scroll that you get. Later. The sun had set and Naruto and Hinata were just outside of the Hokage tower. The two had snuck all the way there, not sure what kind of guards that Mizuki would have placed in their way to stop them, so Naruto had asked Hinata to use her eyes to make sure they avoided everyone, just to be sure. He was glad that she was here with him. With her he knew that they would pass this with no trouble at all. As they finally reached it, Naruto asked her if she could see inside of the tower. She nodded and scanned the place for the scroll that Mizuki had told them about. He was very detailed about it, and she eventually found what she guessed had to be it. It was a very large scroll in a room all its own that was next to the Hokage's office, but she noticed that the office wasn't empty. Naruto, the Hokage is still in there, she told him. Crap, the old man must be in on it too. He must think it's funny to let himself test us, but he made a major mistake, as I know his greatest weakness. Naruto grinned and Hinata gave him a confused look. Hinata, keep an eye on me. If you spot anyone coming my way, give one of those signals we learned in class, like a bird call or something, okay? He asked her and she nodded once he was off. It wasn't hard for Naruto to get into the Hokage's office, after all he had done it countless times to see him over the years. Even when the guards said that he was busy, Naruto found a way in. There were more ways in and out than most people knew about, and he had found all the little secret ways in. Naruto was making his way to the crawl space that was overhead the office, something he used a lot to surprise the Hokage from time to time when he wanted to drop in on him. It took some time, but he finally made it into the small crawl way. It was always dusty and lots of spider webs. He hated those things, especially when they got in his face and hair. But he silently crawled in the darkness to his location. He memorized the route by now and stopped to the small hole he made as a peephole to see what the old man was doing. Naruto was confused when he saw that he was working on paperwork instead of guarding, but he just figured that the Hokage had put this paperwork off again and was using the exam as an excuse to get caught up. Well, old man, you should have paid more attention, because I'm going to give you the change to act, he thought to himself, readying the panel he was now at. With one move he threw the panel aside and jumped down. He grinned, seeing the surprised look on the Hokage's face. It was almost like he didn't expect to see him. Before the Hokage could say a word, he did a familiar sand seal, sexy jutsu. Naruto had long since known that the Hokage was a closet pervert. After all, he had the same books as his dad hidden in the lower left-hand drawer of his desk. He was in the form of that sexy teen blonde girl with the pigtails, giving him the most adorable and sexy look that he could think of. That was all it took for him to defeat the Hokage. Naruto turned back and laughed a bit, seeing the old man on his back twitching with the twin blood trails from his nose. Okay, first take out the guard and now for the scroll, we're so going to pass this exam, Naruto said before going into the room where Hinata had seen the scroll. It was 15 minutes later that someone finally showed up to the Hokage's office, and that was none other than Kakashi. He had been late showing up for Naruto's big day, which he knew that his son would never let him live down or forget, but at any rate he was just going to bribe him with new lessons for being late. He had been so caught up at the memorial stone that he had lost track of time and rushed over to find that Naruto wasn't at the school. He spent the last few hours looking all over the place. He tried home first, then the park, then he rushed over to the ramen stand, but they hadn't seen him either. He even tried the top of the Hokage monument. Naruto didn't think that he didn't know that it was one of his son's favorite spots when he wanted to be alone, but Kakashi knew but let him be when he went there usually. But he wasn't there either. It was at this point that he was really starting to worry where his son might be. He tried thinking of any other place that he might go and decided that if he wasn't with the Hokage he would try the Hyuga compound and see if he was with Hinata, then he would see if Guy or Enko knew where he might be as well. When he got to the tower he noticed that there was a lot of activity going on. He was curious what was going on, but his son came first. When he got into the office he was surprised to see the Hokage at his desk wiping what looked like blood from his desk. The Hokage looked up at him with a serious look on his face. "Kakashi, we have some trouble," he said to the masked ninja. Already he had a bad feeling about what this trouble might be. "Just tell me my son isn't involved." "I'm sorry, but Naruto came in here and surprised me with—" "Well, never mind what he surprised me with." The Hokage blushed at the thought of that and made a mental note as to what the hell Kakashi was teaching his son to come up with something like that. He shook the thoughts away to get to the matter at hand. At any rate he managed to steal the forbidden scroll and I'm already organizing a search party for him. He what? Kakashi's single eye widened in shock. He wasn't sure what surprised him more. That Naruto got past the Hokage that he stole that scroll or even knew that it existed. He was sure that he never once mentioned that scroll, and it's not like it's taught in school, and he knew that other ninjas that Naruto knew would never say something about that with a child in the room. It didn't make sense for Naruto to steal that scroll, and something was nagging him about this, and if a ninja got to trust one thing it was his gut feelings. "I'll look for him, after all I know him best and might be able to find out where he is," Kakashi said to him. "Very well, but you honestly think the others won't be able to find him?" The Hokage asked. Kakashi's eyes smiled under his mask. "Have you forgotten who has been giving him lessons all his life? And let's not forget how long it took for him to be caught after painting the monument. I swear the Jonin and Chunins are still sore that they couldn't catch a 13-year-old boy that wasn't even out of the academy yet." Although he did neglect to mention that Naruto knew all the best Jonin and a few special Jonin, and they liked him too much to really put some heart into the chase, but the point was still made. He even heard a couple had quite Anbu in order to focus more on their training, since even they had trouble catching him. The Hokage nodded his head as Kakashi made his leave. Now outside he started to look around for any signs that Naruto might have left, but it seemed that he trained Naruto too well in stealth and escape and evade procedures. He knew that time wasn't on his side since that scroll held a lot of dangerous techniques, and he didn't want to think what could happen if Naruto tried to read one and then tried it. Because he knew that Naruto wouldn't be able to resist learning at least one move, so he pulled out a kunai and made a small cut on his hand. He used the familiar hand seals and summoned his dogs, all of them that is. "Hey Kakashi, what's the trouble?" Pakun asked his master, looking up at the man. "In short, I need you all to track Naruto down for me," he told his lead dog. Pakun winced knowing that Naruto was in trouble yet again. He swore the kid was always getting into something, it seemed. "Do I want to know what he did this time?" "No time, just find him and get me to him as fast as you can. He could be in some serious trouble if we don't get to him in time," Kakashi said in a worried tone. The dogs all nodded their heads and ran off to find Naruto's scent. They dogs all liked Naruto as he had always treated them well, and if he was in trouble they would try to find him as quickly as he could. Kakashi watched them run off sniffing for any trace of him from around the tower, and he hoped they would find something soon. He looked to the village and he had to wonder just where his son was and what was he thinking, and he really hoped he wasn't doing something stupid like reading that scroll. In the woods that surrounded the village, Naruto and Hinata were at a small clearing with a small shed. Hinata was with him, looking nervous as Naruto was on the grass trying to read the large scroll by moonlight. He had been curious as to what the scroll had in it, and when he pulled it open he was surprised to see a list of jutsus and other techniques. Naruto thought it was some type of teaching scroll that maybe you get to learn something from it if you manage to take it or something like that. Hinata wasn't so sure. The moves that Naruto listed off, she wasn't familiar with most of them, and a few she thought she noticed only high-ranking ninjas did, at least higher than a genin was supposed to know. "Hey Hinata-chan, check this out, it's got the shadow clone jutsu in here too." Naruto pointed to the same technique his father taught him. The what? Hinata took a closer look. It looked like a regular clone technique but with a different hand seal at the end of it. "Yeah, my dad taught me it so I could pass. He said I can't make normal clones, but shadow clones are easy. They're all solid and stuff too, so they can actually hit your enemy with them. There is supposed to be more, but my dad said he would tell the whole thing after I passed," Naruto explained to his friend. Hinata took a closer look at the instructions as she read on out loud. It was one of the few times she could speak without stuttering when she was reading something. "The shadow clone jutsu is a jonin level technique and should not be taught until then because the level of chakra needed to use it safely could seriously harm or kill a person with too little chakra." She looked at Naruto worried, but he just brushed it off. "Oh, what do they know? I can do it just fine." She read on. "The clones, when dispelled, also send the original person all of their memories and experiences. This makes them perfect for spying, as any information they have will be sent back to the original." "What? I didn't notice that when I used it." Naruto looked closer at the fine print and tried to remember all the training he did with the clones. He had done it so many times that he just thought that the memories he had were just from all his tries, but actually looking back and thinking hard about it he realized that the scroll was right. "Oh, I can't believe I didn't notice that before. I'm such an idiot," he yelled out, grabbing his head. Hinata felt a little sorry for him but honestly never knew what to say in these moments, but then Naruto was back to reading the scroll again, trying to find something he could use. "Naruto-kun, what are you looking for?" "I'm looking for a new kick-ass jutsu that I can try out in this thing. Hey, maybe there is something for you to use as well. I bet it would impress your dad if you could master something from this as well too." Naruto said brightly, and Hinata thought about it. Would her father be proud of something like that? She honestly thought that he might if she could learn an advanced move all on her own, so against her better judgment she decided to look with Naruto as well.